there's so much going on here, right? I mean, it seems like the whole region's on fire, but let's try to start from 30,000 feet. Talk to us about this ground incursion. How significant is this? I mean, obviously, they've been conducting airstrikes. They've obviously had very targeted intel-based operations, but the ground incursion, how significant from your perspective is it?
This is significant, this ground incursion, because up until this point, we're 1 week, less than a week. We're 5 days from when Hamas launched its attack on southern Israel. The Israelis have been taking fire from Hezbollah daily. And the Israeli response has essentially, up until the last month or so, been a tit for tat, a response. Hezbollah launches rockets, targets rocket sites, maybe takes out some low level fighters. But over the last several months, Israel has stepped up. The attacks haven't ceased. Israelis, tens of thousands of Israelis, up to 100,000 Israelis in the north are displaced. Rocket and missile fire daily being targeting Israeli military bases, homes, civilian infrastructure. So the Israelis have, over the last couple of months, have been working to. I don't want to use the word escalate because that is there's a negative connotation to that. But Israel has upped the price for Hezbollah launching these daily attacks, as it's right to do. The Israelis did not start attacking Hezbollah on October 8th. Hezbollah started attacking Israel on October 8th of last year. So this is a response. The Israelis just want Hezbollah to stop. They want their civilians to be able to return. So going onto the ground in Lebanon is definitely a step up from where the Israelis. Now the Israelis are committing ground forces. The last war the Israelis fought in Lebanon in 2006 didn't go the way the Israelis expected. Hezbollah survived that war. International pressure after about 30 days forced the Israelis to halt. But this is different. This is a very different situation. The Israelis have to remain committed to this. If they show weakness here at this point in time, then Hezbollah survives. So the Israelis need to continue the pressure and target. It wasn't just Hassan Nasrallah,
Right.
but key members of the military and political leadership of Hezbollah. Thousands of fighters were wounded in the pager and radio attacks that Israel launched, which was brilliant. So Israel has increased the price for Hezbollah in conducting its daily attacks. Going into Lebanon, it's yet another step. But again, the Israelis have to remain committed to this.
Well, I mean, you raised a good point when you mentioned the 2006 war, right? Because at the end of that, I think it went on for some 34 days. But at the end of that, essentially, Hezbollah's leadership and their command structure was still intact, right? They really hadn't been successful in targeting. And that's completely changed at this point, right? They've decimated, at this stage, after the past handful of weeks, they've decimated Hezbollah's command structure all the way up to the very top, including Nasrallah, of course. But are there concerns, whether it's on the part of the Israeli War Cabinet, the IDF, or here in the U.S. with the U.S. administration, are there concerns about what essentially is now a multi-front war, right? Because we have to remember, and it's easy to forget, but we have to remember that they've still got operations going on against Hamas, and clearly now there's this direct conflict with Iran that's taken front and center. So are there concerns about this multi-front issue and their capabilities, their resources?
So I'll address the capabilities and resources part of that question. Yes, I'm very much concerned. The Israelis, particularly on resources, are dependent on the U.S. and other countries for much of its weapons to continue the fight. Israel cannot produce the amount of weapon systems and munitions needed to fight a high-intensity war for an extended period of time. So the U.S. being its prime ally and the prime supplier, the Biden administration has not been, in my estimation, steadfast in its support. the Israelis have the will. I always
But
say
Bill,
the
Bill,
Israelis.
Bill, can I let me interrupt you just there because it's I
Sure.
mean, that's very interesting. When you say they haven't been steadfast in support, that could that be operating on two tracks? Obviously, from a public perspective, it seems like all the White House has been doing is kind of criticizing Israeli leadership, pushing for a ceasefire, certainly in Gaza, and now obviously with Lebanon, pushing for a limited retaliation or response to Iran. But from what you've seen, behind the radar, behind the scenes, are they still fully supportive in terms of the resources, of the hardware, the military capabilities? So, I mean, we're seeing the public kind of with the White House, and I think there's some domestic politics there. But from the important side of, are we getting them the resources they need, which happens off the radar screen? Anything to that?
Yeah, so the U.S. has at times held back, particularly munitions, 2,000-pound bombs. I don't. So and other munitions, and there's pressure from certain congressmen, congresswomen to shut off all aid to Israel. This is something unthinkable just
Yep.
20 years ago. But the what is done publicly matters because what this does, it's just to me as important as the munitions behind and other weapon systems behind the scene. Because what Hezbollah sees, what Iran sees, what Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad see, and the Houthis
Right.
and the Iraqi and Shia militia see is they see the U.S. publicly denouncing Israel or being critical or calling for the ceasefire. Then this gives them the it fortifies them. It tells them, hey, all we need to do is continue fighting. The pressure is on Israel. And then other countries become weak in their support. So that deteriorating situation on the political and diplomatic side, that really harms Israel in many ways that I think in a lot of ways we don't even understand.
Yeah.
So the other part of your question was, is this going to lead to a wider war? I argue there already is a wider war occurring. Hezbollah is attacking Israel daily. The Houthis launching attacks against Israel while shutting down the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden and basically shutting 90% of the material going through the Suez Canal is no longer going through there, increasing shipping rates and insurance and all that. You have Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other terror groups in Gaza and the West Bank. You have the Iraqi and Shia militias attempting drone and missile strikes against Israel. That wider war exists already. Iran has been escalating from day one, has escalated this war. Again, Israel didn't attack Hezbollah on October 8th.
Right.
Hezbollah attacked Israel and has been persistent in doing so since. Israel didn't attack the Houthis. Israel didn't attack the Iraqi and Shia militias. This is Iran making a regional war. And somehow it's perverse, but somehow Israel's response to being attacked, to protecting its sovereignty, is the Israelis escalating. I just, when people mention this to me, I say to them, could you imagine if let's say the drug cartels in Mexico attacked the United States and the Mexican government was permissive or supportive or just didn't care? Could you imagine what our response would be? Would our response be to escalate after that attack? That's how we're treating the Israelis. That's how the international.
I don't know,
community.
Bill. Our response right now with the current administration might be they would just say, hey, have you heard about the CBP One app, for asylum purposes? Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.